Tropical storm Julia advances off the coast of El Salvador, leaving fatal victims, landslides, and infrastructure affectations in Nicaragua, Colombia, and Venezuela. President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, chaired the National Security Council after an explosion on the bridge of Crimea, which was described by the head of state as a terrorist attack. In Burkina Faso, the country's proclaimed leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, called for a national assembly on October 14th and 15th. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Now we begin with the news. El Salvador authorities reported the advance of Tropical Storm Julia off the country's coasts. According to the information provided by the Salvadoran Ministry of Environment and taken up by Presidency, there is still a very high probability of overflowing of rivers and streams, urban flooding, and flooding of the large areas of the municipalities of AMS, La Libertad, San Miguel, Pasaquina, and La Unión. In view of the emergency, the government indicated that all state institutions are active. In the early hours of Monday morning, the Ministry of Environment also reported a very high probability of between 80 and 100% of debris flows representing a danger to human life and severe damage to infrastructure in Cerro El Picacho and in the San Vicente volcano. At the same time, the Environment Portfolio forecasts that there will be constant rainfall of moderate to light intensity in the metropolitan area of San Salvador. The Nicaraguan government maintains red alert state throughout the country due to the heavy rains that are still expected to hit the nation after the passage of Hurricane Julia. The Nicaraguan Institute of Territorial Studies announced that the tropical storm continues its path in the direction of El Salvador. Officials informed that the remaining rains are already produced floods in different localities, and they emphasized that the whole national territory will be affected by the rains. In this sense, Vice President Rosario Murillo reported the departure of the meteorological phenomenon while calling the population to maintain preventive measures due to the residual rainfall. The President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, visited on Sunday the Caribbean island of San Andres to evaluate the situation after the passage of the Category 1 Hurricane Julia. After a visit to the island, Petro assured that he saw slight problems and highlighted the damage to the roofs of some 100 or 200 homes. He also pointed out failures in the education of the island's population so that they themselves have the capacity to follow the prevention protocols. To attend to the needs of the island's population and of the Department of La Guajira, the Colombian government sent 23 tons of humanitarian aid. In addition, Petro indicated that in the case of Sant Andres, workers from the community will be hired to repair damaged roofs and build houses. In Venezuela, authorities at all levels and the organized community are deployed in Las Tejerias, Aragua State, after the landslide caused by heavy rains related to Hurricane Julia. On Monday morning, Venezuelan authorities gave a report on the situation and said that so far 25 people have died and 52 are missing. They also detailed that the heavy rains caused several creeks to overflow, sweeping away houses and flooding the streets of the town. In this context, ministers, rescue teams, community leaders, and the community in general are carrying out recovery tasks in the area, searching for survivors and distributing aid to the affected. In this context, the Vice President stressed that all authorities at national level are deployed to address the situation.
All right. The ministers of the area, the housing minister, the ministers of health, water, security, and social vice presidents are addressing all the needs. We have to assist all the communities that have been affected. They are obviously very affected by the human losses occurred here. And also President Nicolás Maduro is going to declare this zone as a tragedy zone, and he has proclaimed 3 days of mourning for the loss of the very dear Venezuelans that we had in this zone. All very regrettable.
In this context, President Nicolás Maduro Moros declared the affected communities a natural disaster zone. On Twitter, the head of state wrote, "Due to the serious situation resulting from the large-scale landslides caused by the rains, I decreed in the communities that make up Las Tejerias a natural disaster and catastrophe zone, and 3 days of national mourning started on October 9th in solidarity with the affected families." On Sunday, Cuba received the first shipments of humanitarian aid from Venezuela after the impact of Hurricane Ian. The shipment is part of the solidarity aid for the western provinces affected by Hurricane Ian, with a donation of 400,000 bags of food. The cargo also includes 52 transformers, 22,000 square meters of aluminum roof tiles, and 4.8 tons of cables for networks. Venezuelan ambassador to Cuba, Alan Chavez, together with Betsy Diaz, Cuba's Minister of Domestic Trade, welcomed the two ships at the port of Mariel, 45 kilometers from the Cuban capital. The actions represent an act of solidarity and brotherhood between the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean.
We are not giving what we have left over, but we are truly sharing the little or much we have, depending on the circumstances we are living. A true brotherhood, true solidarity, which for us, comrades, began to consolidate with great strength under the leadership of those two giants that are and will always be Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez.
Betsy Diaz, the Minister of Domestic Trade for Cuba, thanked the Venezuelan government for its generous and disinterested contribution, to which another invaluable cargo vessel will be added in the next few days to repair the damage caused by Hurricane Ian.
These two ships that arrived with a donation of 400,000 bags of food, electrical material and roofs are the prelude for further shipments that we will receive in the coming weeks, as announced by the ambassador, and which will be of incalculable value for repairing in less time the damage caused and returning the victims to normality.
We'll take a short break, but first, remember you can now follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Caribbean people continued mourning the loss of Pan-Africanist and attorney at law Robert Clark. At a tribute held at Golden Square Freedom Park in Barbados, several personalities from the region attended this ceremony to honor the Barbadian lawyer, politician, and former election candidate. Robert Clark was instrumental in the start of African Liberation Day and was involved in Caribbean political movements such as the New Jewel movement in Grenada, the National Joint Action Committee of Trinidad, headed by Gides Granger, and the Working People's Alliance of Guyana, headed by the late Walter Rodney. We move on to other topics. In Brazil, presidential candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva held a new mass rally in Belo Horizonte in the framework of the campaign of the runoff elections to be held in this October 30th. Together with his running mate, Geraldo Alckmin, and the coalition leaders, Lula toured the city to present his arguments before a crowd of supporters. The state of Minas Gerais is of great importance for the strategy of both candidates. Lula, who is leading in the polls, visited the region 5 times during the campaign for the first round of the elections. At the same time as the mass rally, the former president also rejected on Twitter the new cuts in education announced by his opponent and the current president, Jair Bolsonaro. In the U.S., feminist groups marched in favor of abortion rights a month before the presidential midterm elections for the renewal of the Houses of Congress. This Sunday, the streets of Washington, New York, Denver, and Colorado were part of the demonstration for women's reproductive rights, particularly abortion. In their demands, they asked the Supreme Court to revoke the federal right to voluntary termination of pregnancy. In this context, the women who participated wore green armbands and scarves, as well as carried signs calling for a feminist tsunami, urging people to vote for the freedom of women's rights. Hundreds of farmers blocked the streets of Frankfurt, Germany, with tractors to protest against high prices and energy shortages. The protesters demanded more direct aid from the governments to pay the bills, with others also pushing for a reintroduction of quotas. The farmers have been hit by a number of factors, including droughts in key European agricultural areas that have reduced grain, fruit, and vegetables harvest this year. More recently, however, is the conflict in Ukraine that has had a dramatic effect on prices for beef, pork, and milk, in addition to the persecution policy implemented by Europe against the Russian government and the economy. Now we move on to other topics. The president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, chaired a National Security Council after an explosion on the bridge in Crimea, which was described by the head of state as a terrorist attack. During the session, Putin confirmed that on Monday morning, Russian forces carried out a massive attack with high-precision and long-range weapons in Ukraine on energy, military, and communications targets. The Security Council meeting also comes shortly after downtown Kiev was hit by missiles. The Russian president on Sunday blames Ukraine's special services for the explosion of the Crimean bridge that left several dead and set fire to 7 fuel tanks on a train heading for the Crimean Peninsula. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In Burkina Faso, the country's proclaimed leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, called for a National Assembly on October 14th and 15th. The announcement was made known through the reading of a decree on the state television. This call is also for the appointment of a transition charter for the re-establishment of the steps to be followed to carry out a subsequent call for the election of a new transitional president. On the other hand, the leader Traoré, after his rise to power, assured that the military forces lacked logistics with his predecessor Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, and assured that they will work on the solution of the crisis affecting the country. In Turkey, an explosion was reported on Sunday in a building located in the Kadikov neighborhood of the Turkish city of Istanbul. According to authorities, the flames spread to 2 other neighboring buildings, greatly affecting their infrastructure. Authorities also said that a large number of police, firefighters, and emergency teams have been deployed to the scene to deal with the situation. At the moment, no victims have been reported. While in the middle of rescue efforts, a person was taken out of the main building affected, being transferred to a hospital to receive medical attention due to the injuries caused by the fire. The reason for the explosion is still unknown, so investigations are being carried out to clarify the facts. Emergency services put out a large fire that broke out at the St. Taurus Mall in the center of Pakistani capital Islamabad. The Capital Development Authority confirmed the fire was under control after 2 hours and that everyone in the shopping center was evacuated safely with no casualties reported. The fire broke out at lunchtime, with footage showing roaring flames near the food court while it was full with visitors. The capital's Deputy Commissioner, Irfan Nawaz Limon, said the shopping center and nearby residential buildings were being sealed until technical team had reports on the structural capability of the towers after the fire. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif ordered all relevant institutions and the authorities to take immediate action.
A man came and told us that a fire had broken out and the situation is getting bad, so we should evacuate the building. When I came out, I saw people were running and it was a panic situation and everyone was coming out.
And it's the first time I'm seeing such kind of emergency and such kind of bustle and bustle, what's happening, and every people saying, go outside, don't go outside, nothing else to save.
And thousands of Buddhist devotees gathered in Myanmar's Swardagan Pagoda to mark the full moon of the Ta Ding Yud festival on Sunday, some offering prayers for a country plunged into turmoil by last year's coup. The three-day festival marks Buddha's descent from heaven and is normally marked by large fireworks displays, with candles and colorful lanterns lighting up streets and homes. Early morning crowds line up in commercial Habyangan to pray at the towering, gold-plated Swardagan Pagoda, Myanmar's most important Buddhist site. Local chronicles said it contains strands of the Buddha's hair. Last year, Myanmar's military junta announced an amnesty for hundreds of protesters detained since the coup. However, the junta has so far not announced any amnesty to mark this year's three-day festival, which ends on Monday. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.